So I know before the break we saw the tonal reel / short film that became our first feature film, The Land, right? So dope. We were able to get something made for little or no money, and a bunch of favors and a bunch of love from crew and all that good stuff, right? But we've all in here probably based on that we thought was dope, but then how do you get people to actually see it was the question, right? And for us, more specifically, how do we get the right people to see it so that we can turn this into an opportunity to make our first movie? So here's where the finesse came in. So the process was, I had met, because of all those internships over the 6 years, I had met a bunch of people and met a bunch of executives, and they all knew I wanted to be a producer and all that good stuff, right? So I had those contacts. I met a bunch of agents because I used the idea of being a student, like, hey, can I come learn from you for 15 minutes or whatever, right? And again, people are usually pretty open to that, or at least they were. So I utilized all of those contacts to try to get all of them to come see the movie at like a screening or like a premiere, let's say. But I didn't have resources to actually make a premiere happen. And then there was this company called Indie Night Film Festival that actually just started doing it in Atlanta too. So Dave Brown, Morehouse alum, had a program called Indie Night Film Festival at the Chinese Theater in LA, which if you don't know what a Chinese theater is, it's right on Hollywood Boulevard. It's the theater that most big premieres will try to use if it's available for red carpet premieres and whatnot. And he convinced the Chinese theater to let him use it once every weekend to debut short films and call it a film festival, a weekly film festival for young filmmakers. And the only thing they had to do was invite people to show up and buy a ticket and buy concessions to support. And so I basically convinced Dave that he should let us use it as our premiere. And he's like, well, can't do that, but you can like show it here, right? And so I still made up flyers that said we were doing a premiere for, I don't know, Dave, if you're watching, if you listen, I don't know, you probably know that. But I made flyers that said Land of Misfits, which is what the short was called at the time instead of The Land. Land of Misfits movie premiere, and invited a bunch of people via email or whatever else. And invited all these agents and managers and people I thought had money that could finance the movie, and people that worked at studios who could also finance the movie. Whoever I thought made sense to achieve the goal. Now, none of them showed up. However, most of their assistants showed up, which was actually more impactful. And that happens a lot. Like junior executives or assistants, that's who will get sent out to go scout, right? To go see these new filmmakers, the short films, or go to the festivals or what have you. So we had a room full of people that were excited to see our film. Now when they got there, they were a little confused why there were other short films showing. And we just said, oh, those are the previews. They just happened before ours. So they watched that stuff, and they watched ours. That was on a Saturday afternoon. By Tuesday morning, it was a frenzy, right? So we had a lot of people reaching out to say, what is this short film I heard about? Like, that y'all are doing? Are y'all doing something with it? We like that director. Is there a movie? I'm like, yeah, there's a movie. I sent you the script 3 months ago. You didn't read it. But no, here's a script. Here's a movie. Here's what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. So that gave us access to a lot of conversations, right? The director, got signed to WME. He already had a manager, et cetera. So it was all love, and we were off to the races from there. And then, eventually Charles King came in to finance half of the movie. We had another financier doing the other half, and the rest was history. So we made the movie. Now, that sounds simple, but really what I want you to take away from that is all I did and all we did as a team was look around us to see what was available, right? And sometimes what you see is not actually what it is. So what I mean is Indie Night Film Festival is not the same as a movie premiere for this little 6-minute thing we made, right? But we saw Indie Night Film Festival and said, that's a movie premiere for our little 6-minute video, right? So we turned it into that. And so it's just about identifying what's around you and then taking that and trying to make it into something that you really, really need and being targeted too, right? We invited the right people. Again, like the right people needed to see it. We wanted everybody to see it, but we want the right people to see it. So that was sort of a tangible thing. Obviously, as I mentioned, in making it, it was all about, we didn't have equipment. We didn't own equipment. So we had to utilize a class that Capel was in, that Stephen was in. We utilized a class that he had to get a production number at the school, and that production number allowed us to check out equipment and then we used that equipment for his assignment, but we really used it for this, right? And so that gave us an opportunity to create what we needed to create. Now, going from that point to actually getting the money, which is frankly the most important part in the first half of the process, how do you actually get the financing? I didn't know anybody of high wealth, so I wasn't necessarily in the circles of people where I could go ask for money or ask, do you know somebody who has the money to finance the movie? So the only way I knew how to do it was to, again, this is another lesson, like control what you can control. And what I could control was creating something that would get the word out about the movie. What I could control was hustling to get somebody to give me a space to show it. What I could control was putting myself on somebody's couch at Sundance, even because I couldn't really afford to be there, sleeping on somebody's couch or floor, to be out in the mix in the streets and meeting people and trying to get to know and understand what the system was, right? And just putting myself in the room. And that was what I could control. But even after all of that, we still didn't have the money. So what does that mean? There was no strategy, to be honest. There was no strategy, on my part at least, involved in how I got the money for that movie. It was literally like divine intervention, right? So we just had, again, going back to purpose, I wasn't chasing the result being, I want to make this movie, therefore I need money. I wasn't chasing the result, I was chasing the purpose. So because I was chasing that, everything else is sort of aligned with that, ultimately, right? And that is, somebody came up a few minutes ago and was like, I applaud that you kind of have to be a little delusional, right, to do this, and you do. That's, the real is, as a once wise rapper once said, the self-esteem was what powered his dreams, right? And so that's something that is very real in our business. You do have to kind of have a sense of, I'm so tapped into what I'm going to do, there's nothing that can stop that, and then everything else sort of falls in line. But there's going to be hard days, don't get it twisted, but it just means that you have to kind of stay tapped into that. So fast forward, we get the money, we're in Cleveland, we're about to shoot the movie, we have a financier who's going to finance the whole thing. Macro was not in play yet, and then Charles King called and he said, hey, my fund just came together, the finance fund just came together, where are y'all at with the movie? I was like, we're in Cleveland, we're shooting the movie in 3 weeks. He's like, what? It's like, you think I can still finance part of it? I was like, absolutely, we need your help, because at the time, we were trying to get a few more big actors to come play, right, to help with the overall package of the project. And for those that don't know, having the package is what allows you to get the movie sold at a certain level eventually, right? Not because financing the movie is not the goal. Getting the movie sold and distributed is the goal. And then having it reach people is the real goal. So Charles came in and financed half the movie. That became Macro's first movie. That was obviously my first film. And this is where, Charles was obviously had a crazy career of nothing but deal making up until the point of starting Macro. This is where he really came into play, because I can hustle and I know I'm savvy in the sense that I understand deal making, but I didn't have the resources or the contacts yet. So the other lesson is partner with people that are tangible attachments only. So I was not interested in partnering with somebody who just had money, because that's valuable, but I'd rather your dollar equal $100, right? Which means that it comes with advice, it comes with strategy, it comes with contacts, it comes with things that are going to amplify the effort. So again, only take tangible attachments. Don't attach somebody just for their name if they're not actually going to do anything or help amplify what you're doing. So Charles came in, and we had a conversation with Erykah Badu's team. So she starred in the film. You'll see the trailer. She starred in the film as one of the characters, and she also, did a song. Well, because I always knew I wanted to produce studio level movies. That doesn't necessarily mean non-independent. It just means studio level movies that are being in the theater. I knew that my first movie, or I wanted my first movie to sort of be an indicator of the kind of movies that I wanted to make later, right? So for me, that meant, is there a way to make this package feel like a studio package, right? So yes, we have like craft actors like Kim Coates. Then we have these, new faces that were the 4 boys in the lead of the movie. But then we also had, a music star that brings a whole different audience than Erykah Badu. Badu is an amazing actress, by the way, if you didn't know. She actually is one of the few artists I think that can translate their artistry from one medium to another. And I wanted a soundtrack, frankly. I was like, all the big movies I grew up loving, they all had dope soundtracks. Stephen Capel, because of, the process and the excitement around his shorts and all of that, and this project, he got signed to WME. And WME, as a way to kind of, excite him about being there, took him to a Nas concert because he's a big fan, as most of us were. He goes to the concert, meets Nas, and Nas said to him afterwards, "If you ever need anything, let me know." And Capel thought it was just cool. I said, "Bro," he said anything. Call that man and ask him if he'll do the soundtrack, right? He's like, "Nah, he didn't mean it like that. People just say that." I was like, he shouldn't have said it if he didn't mean it. So he called Nas. Nas was like, he emailed Nas. He said, "Say less, good as done," right? So Nas came on to do the soundtrack. So let's watch the trailer real quick, and I'll walk you through some of the other process. The mission, and this leads into the sort of last section of the lesson. The mission with the tonal reel, the secret mission that I was up to, right, is that Capel was really Stephen Capel. We only use last names, so we're all named Stephen. The DP was Stephen Holler, and the director was Stephen Capel, and I was Stephen Love. So we just call each other by last names. So all the brothers called me Love, which was interesting. And so we were really intentional because Capel was very pragmatic about wanting his voice to also be the sum of all the voices around him, right? So that meant that the editor that he used in school for all of his projects, even this movie and Creed 2, he wanted to continue working with her, right? Sarah Hyder. And so we were classmates. The same with our DP at the time, Stephen Holleran, right? The same with me as a producer. And a lot of other, our head of makeup, our head of wardrobe, like they were all people that we created with while we were in school. And so I knew that the best fighting chance we had and sort of the healthy byproduct of creating the tonal reel you saw earlier was if we had all of those people work on that piece and crush it, right? So then when I'm taking the big movie out and I'm saying, here's the script, here's the director, first of all, as a producer, if there's any aspiring producers in the room, which I know there are, the most important thing you can do in the early stages is have your paperwork in order. And specifically, I mean optioning the script that you're working on. So if your intention is to make a movie, even if it's your friend, your homie, et cetera, find an option agreement, a very simple option agreement. You can find them on the internet pretty easily. It should be short and sweet. Pay them $1 to control that script for however much time y'all both feel comfortable with. If that's 12 months, if that's 18 months, et cetera, I would suggest at least 12 months with an option to increase it by another 6 months if you pay another whopping $1 check, right? But make sure you do that, and make sure you do it as a check so that there's a printed copy of the tender that was exchanged, and make sure they cash it, right? All those things are important because when it's time to take the movie out, if you're a young producer like I was at the time with no experience other than school, you could be written off as, oh, that's just so-and-so's homie that he or she has on there as a producer. But that's not fair if you've actually been doing the work and actually developing it and trying to get it made. And, I can't really blame a first-time director, to be honest, even though we all would love to think that our friends would hold us down and all that. Capel was ready to fight for me for sure. I believe that, but at the same time, I didn't want to put him in a position where he needed to. That he should be fighting for extra shooting days. He should be fighting for a particular actor he wants. He shouldn't have to fight for his producer to be on the movie, right? So by having an option on the script, albeit for a whopping $1, it meant that I controlled the rights to that script. So anytime anybody wanted to engage and finance the movie, they had to get those rights from me, not from Capel at the time, right? But that was something that we had to talk about, and we had a understanding of like, this is why I need you to do this, and he was with it. Now, to go back, that's the lesson there. But I would say, going to that short and making sure that the same team that we wanted to keep intact on the feature was on that short, it's not a guaranteed thing. Because frankly, first-time directors, even now looking back on it, there's been times when I would think, okay, I see what it's like to have a first-time director paired with a very experienced cinematographer. or a very experienced editor, right? But if it's important to you, like it was to us, to have all those same people work on the feature, I basically went to everybody and said, look, I know you're fighting us right now because you don't want us to hire, basically you think are just our friends, our homies, to shoot this movie or edit this movie or what have you, or to style the movie with costume, but you could do that. You could change any of those elements. But what you bought is this 6-minute piece. So if you want what you bought, I suggest you don't change anything. But you can change something if you want to. I'm just suggesting you don't if you want what you bought, right? And look, that may not always work, but in that sense it did work. And so it meant that our entire community was able to work on that first film, and everybody's kind of launched from there and had big careers from that moment, right? That's one of the things I'm most proud of with that movie, outside of the soundtrack, because the soundtrack was fire. But other than that, I'm most proud of that, I would say.